Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. We're continuing our reading of Niccolo Machiavelli's The Prince and Other Writings. He has been quite intriguing, I must say, and quite a joy to read, so we're going to pick up upon that path. Let's begin. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. And since the subject requires it, I do not wish to fail to remind princes who have recently taken over a state, through the help of those inside it, that they should consider well what cause may have moved those who favored them to have done so. So here we see, you took over and the people from the inside helped you, right? Now, you need to see what was the motive of it. For example, in Bernal Diaz's book, when he was with Hernan Cortez, the Aztecs hoarding all the salt and expecting a lot from the smaller tribes, they were willing to risk it to help the Spaniards to take over, right? And so, if you look also in fictional examples, in The Walking Dead, the saviors ruled by Negan, they're a bit brutal in their approach to convincing people to stick within line. And this caused the Hilltop, Rick's group Alexandria, and the kingdom ran by Ezekiel to unite and move against the saviors. And so basically, if people have decided from within to revolt, it would do you well to see that you don't make the same mistakes their last ruler did. You came as a liberator, you came to change stuff. Well, you gotta make sure you don't fall into the same traps. And if it is not natural affection for them, but only because those men were not happy with that state, he will be able to keep them his friends only by means of enormous effort and with great difficulty, because it will be impossible for him to satisfy them. And by careful considering the cause of this, using examples drawn from antiquity and modern times, he will see that it is much easier to win the friendship of those who were content with the state before, and were therefore his enemies, than those who, not being content with it, became his friends and supported his occupation of it. Oh, I wonder, so those who were fine with the status quo versus those who want to change things up. So, the status quo versus someone who wants to do a coup or a revolutionary. It has been custom of princes, in order to be able to hold their states more securely, to build fortresses that may serve as the bridle and bit for those who might plan to attack against them. And in order to have a secure refuge against an unexpected attack. I praise this procedure because it has been used since antiquity. Nevertheless, in our own times, Messer Niccolo Vitelli was seen to demolish 2 fortresses in Città di Castello, in order to hold on to that state. Guido Ubaldo, Duke of Urbino, on returning to his dominions from which he had been chased by Cesar Borgia, razed all the fortresses of that country to the ground, and concluded that without them it would be more difficult for him to lose that state again. Wow, I think you should keep them, but I do understand how architecture plays a part in warfare, right? The Bentivogli, returning to Bologna, used similar measures. Thus fortresses are useful, or not, according to the times, and if they help you in one way, they harm you in another. The question can be considered this way. The prince who fears his own people more than foreigners ought to build fortresses. Ooh. That's something right there. Now here's the pickle. In America, do we have fortresses? I don't think so. So, how does the modern American state deal with it? Well, we're armed, so they'll first try to disarm us when they stop trusting us. Okay. When godlessness truly reigns, and there's not really much law and order, they'll deploy the robots, I think, and try to have a cashless society with a social credit score. But maybe their average buildings will be guarded with some type of artificial intelligence. So, in the old days, the fortresses are impenetrable due to the architectural height and the thick wood guarded gates and the watchtowers and moats and all that. So, but to remember, sieging a fortress, you would starve them, right? But then there was also secret tunnels and different ways to escape through the sewage system and whatnot, and just having a ladder to escape out, and, tons of other means. But a fortress today, maybe it would be something along the lines of a smart house, where it's just like you have to show your facial analytics to get inside, but then at the same time, such a house could trap you from inside and not let you out if a hacker was able to hijack the signal and reprogram stuff. So there's a lot to think about in concerning modern fortresses. But the one who has more fear of foreigners than of the people ought to forget about them. The castle of Milan, which Francesco Sforza built there, has brought and will bring more wars upon the house of Sforza than any other disorder in that state. Therefore, the best fortress that exists is not to be hated by the people. For even though you have fortresses, they will not save you if the people hate you. So, even if you have fortresses, it's not going to do you much good because the people hate you. So, a fortress being hated, if someone hates it and they want to see it burn and tore down, they'll see it as refreshing. But if they see it as a historical landmark, something to be proud of, they're not going to want the new occupying force to destroy it. That's interesting. So the fortresses, you don't want the fortress to be hated. You don't want the people to hate you. Now remember, he said it's better to be feared and loved, but to be feared and not despised. So that's the catch. You don't want to be feared and then hated. Because when once the people have taken up arms, they will never lack outsiders to come to their assistance. So here he's talking about like you're inside, they're outside. They can get more refreshing troops than you if you're stuck behind the walls. In our times, no one has seen that a fortress has been profitable to any prince except the Countess of Forli, when Count Girolamo, her consort, was killed. For by its means she was able to escape a popular uprising and wait for help from Milan to retake her state. At that moment the times were such that no outsider could come to the assistance of the people. But later, fortresses were of little value to her when Cesar Borgia attacked her, and the people, being hostile to her, joined with the outsiders. Therefore, at time and earlier, it would have been safer for her not to have been hated by the people than to have had fortresses. Having considered all these things, then I shall praise the prince who builds fortresses and the prince who does not. I shall blame anyone who, trusting in fortresses, thinks it of little moment to be hated by the people. So you can't hide behind your walls when you're hated by the people. That's what he's getting at here. There's a pros and cons to both. He's laid out for us. So, pros and cons to building fortresses. I want a citadel. I want it. I want it to be guarded by dragons. Okay, chapter 21. How a prince should act to gain prestige. Nothing makes a prince so esteemed as when he personally accomplishes things rare and exemplary. Okay, so accomplishing rare feats to be exemplary. In our times, we have Ferdinand of Aragon, the present King of Spain. He may almost be called a new prince because from being a weak king, he has become, through fame and glory, has achieved. The first king among Christians, and if you consider his actions, you will find them all very great and some even extraordinary. At the beginning of his reign, he attacked Granada, and that undertaking was the foundation of his state. First, he did it when his country was at peace and without a hint of opposition. He kept the minds of the barons of Castile occupied with this undertaking, and they, thinking of that war, did not consider making any political changes. And by this means, he acquired prestige and power over them without their becoming aware of it. I didn't really study much of him. I do believe he is the one who funded Christopher Columbus, if I recall. He was able to maintain his armies with money from the church and the people. Oh, look at that. What was that, Christians? You never fund wars? You never had militaries? Your religion never funded armies? Liars. Okay, Christians. Catholics, specifically. Catholics. And with that, so if a Christian hates jihad and hates that Muslims have a form of jihad, you can point out that the Catholic King of Spain, Ferdinand of Aragon, was able to use church funds in order to fund his military aims. Okay? And with that long war, he was able to lay a foundation for his own army, which has since brought him honor. Besides this, in order to be able to undertake greater enterprises, always makes use of religion. So, making use of religion, he devoted himself to the pious cruelty of driving the Marranos out of his kingdom and despoiling them. This example could not be more pitiful or rare. Under this same cloak of religion, he attacked Africa. Under the cloak of religion. So, Ferdinand of Spain, cloak of religion. So when Christians say Christianity is a religion of peace, you can see how rulers definitely had fun time taking out pagans. He attacked Africa, undertook his Italian campaign, and has finally attacked France. I like it when people pretended that you'll have American Christians who will say that Muslims don't belong in the West and then totally ignore how France and Spain and other countries just didn't get along for a very long time. They were warring with each other. They weren't some unified glob of same ideas. And thus he has always done great deeds, which he contrived, and which have always kept his subjects' minds in suspense, and amazed, and occupied with their outcome. And these actions of his having sprung one out of the other in such a way, that between one and the other he never gave men the space to work in tranquillity against him. It also helps a prince a great deal to give rare examples of his abilities in domestic government. So giving examples of your rare abilities, like those which are recounted of Messer Bernabo of Milan. Never heard of him. Let's see. When it happens that someone does something extraordinary, whether for good or for ill, in civil life, the prince should choose a method of rewarding or punishing him that will be much talked about. Oh! Okay, so how can we make this concise? So, reward in a way that makes the plebs talk. Punish in a way that makes people talk. And above all, a prince must strive in his every action to give the impression of himself as a great man and one of exceptional intelligence. Okay, so you don't want to appear as a dumbass. Now, what's fascinating is today the social media controllers who control who goes viral and who doesn't promote morons, degenerates. Look at Aiden Ross. Brother Sneeko is changing, but you can see how if you have a degenerate moron like Aiden Ross, and you have female rappers like Sexy Red, Cardi B, Nicki Minaj, they're pure filth. They get pushed. So YouTube, you'll see brilliant people, they don't have a lot, and then you'll see artificial people like Lex Friedman. I pop into him, but he dances on both sides of the censorship. He always pretends that, oh, I love you all. I love, 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 love. That's just a way to appeal to liberals not to cancel you. We all know that strategy. Tim Pool does the same, but with the Zionist angle. And so, you get to see a lot of truth tellers, they get banned. Banned. So, what the people think is extraordinary today isn't actually extraordinary. It's also often just nonsense. And the stupid among us are promoted. Here you see that Machiavelli is pointing out that people in positions of power, they must show exceptional intelligence. But it is sad how secular liberal atheists getting control of the algorithms have made it to where you don't see examples of exceptional intelligence, and we all follow behind the idiots and the buffoons. It's really something, isn't it? A prince is also esteemed when he is a true friend and a true enemy. That is, when he declares himself without any reservation in favor of one person or against the other. True friend, a true friend, a true enemy. I've been both. I've been a true enemy, though, more than a true friend. I've only been a true friend. My friend list is count on one hand. Because I learned as I aged what is actually a friend and what's an acquaintance or a workmate or a classmate. It took me a while to really understand that. And I think Facebook confused people on what friends actually are. Oh, how many friends do you have on Facebook? I think that's why it's better to call it subscribers or followers. I think subscribers is better. Because then you actually make sure that you don't confuse those people as your friends. Because there's definitely some enemies among those. Right? But when you call everyone who follows you on Facebook a friend, when some of them are enemies, well, that puts your guard down. Gladiator's like playing on the toy made him and bumping into Hedwig as he swings, and Hedwig's like, don't bump into me. And so, being a true enemy, I have done that, yeah. To my own, to where I have to be very careful. Because once I don't like you on a real level, that's when, you know, you have to be thankful that I fear a lot and that there's boundaries. That's when you're able to become a true enemy, you start to watch what you say more, because then you know there's someone else like you out there. This policy will always be more useful than staying neutral. So, the futility of neutrality. For if two powerful neighbors of yours come to blows, either they are such that if one of them wins, you will have to fear the victor, or you will not. Okay, so this is interesting for an election. As a Muslim, I don't want to vote Republican, and I don't want to vote liberal. But who should I fear? The right-winger wants to destroy Muslim homes in the Middle East, but both left and right want to destroy the Palestinians, and the rainbow mafia on the left wants to totally erode religion and push sodomy and other degenerate things. But if the right wing put down the sword against the Middle East and stopped taking out Muslim homes, it wouldn't be so bad. And if the left put down the rainbow flag, it wouldn't be so bad. So it really is fascinating when you think about it. But who would I fear? I think I'd fear the liberal more, because I don't live in the Middle East, so I don't have to fear the right wing. But I would have to fear the liberal, because they may try to brainwash my children becoming eunuchs or getting a double mastectomy or becoming non-binary or that specific type of cult brainwashing. You know, that's what I would fear. And it's just really about the public schools. When I think about it, if they just got out of the public schools, it wouldn't affect me directly, because they're gonna do what they're gonna do. But I don't see why kids should waste time learning about that when you could be learning about other things that'll actually help you in life. But you know, there's much that could be said. So, fearing the victor. Fearing the victor. When it comes, like liberals, some of them want to do progressives specifically, social democrats. They want to have reforms to healthcare and student loan debt. That's great. You know, right wing contends they want lower taxes. I think that's great. So, we'll see. Or you will not. In either of these two cases, it will be more useful for you to declare yourself and wage an honest war. Waging an honest war. Because in the first case, if you do not declare yourself, you will always be the prey of the one who wins, to the delight and satisfaction of the one who has been defeated. Oh my gosh. That is so true. And you will have no excuse or anything else to defend you or offer you a refuge. For whoever wins does not want suspect friends who do not help him in adversity, and whoever loses will not take you in, because you were not willing with sword in hand to share the fortunes of war with him. Damn. That is true. He's just dropping knowledge on us. I think I have an example of this in my own life. I had two friends, and they both wanted the same guy. I was good friends with both of them, but I didn't clearly state whose side I was on. I didn't want to be a part of it, but they both expected me to. I ended up losing my one friend Jessica to my other friend Jasmine. But Jessica ended up winning the guy's heart. He chose to have a family with her. She was a bishop's daughter. Jasmine was pretty, but she had a drinking problem. And he was handsome, but he wasn't my style of handsome. Let's put it that way. But he wasn't ugly. Just not my style. I like mean, rugged, bearded, muscle men. You know, like, that just, you know, he looked more of like somebody who could model for Abercrombie and Fitch. You know, soccer body type of stuff, which is fine if you like that. But looking back in high school, because, you know, I really should have made a stand. And both of them were looking at me like, you're not saying anything, who are you with? And sometimes you want to mind your business, but other times I get it. Now, with some friends, I was like, sword in hand, yeah, we're going at these people. If they're going to jump you, I got your back. That's what we would say. I got your back. You know, and it was true. I have two friends who I was ride or die. Like, if you were coming at them, I'm coming at you just as hard. And I'm going to serve prison time if I have to. Because they have my back and I have theirs. And that's the true test of time. That's why when people say, like, I have so many friends. No, you don't. A friend is somebody who, they get injured, right? They die, you take their kids in, the zombie apocalypse breaks out, we're grouping up, like that's how it is. You know, so many people have confused their networking relationships as friendship, when in reality that's business, that's not friendship. And so, yeah, that's a very interesting point. I'm going to take that definitely to heart. Antiochus went to Greece, being sent there by the Aetolians to drive out the Romans. He dispatched orators to the Achaeans, who were friends of the Romans, to encourage them to remain neutral, while, on the other side, the Romans were urging them to take up arms for them. The matter came up to be deliberated in the council of the Achaeans, where the legate of Antiochus urged them to remain neutral, to which the Roman legate replied, "As to what these men are saying about how you should not get involved in the war, nothing is farther from your interests. Without thanks, without dignity, you will be the prize of the victor." End quote. And it always happens that the one who is not your friend will seek your neutrality. Ooh, let's read that again. The one that is who's not your friend is gonna seek your neutrality. So, because they want to attack you later. And the one who is your friend will ask you to declare yourself by taking up arms. Because they care. Think about it, like, okay, who do you declare for? Like, they're hoping it's you and they want to know on the bat. They can see your merit, they can see you, and the other one pacifies you. Oh, be neutral, be neutral. And most of the time, irresolute princes. So being resolute is declaring. An honest war, if you're going to wage an honest war, you must declare and you must be resolute. In order to avoid present dangers, follow the path of neutrality and come to ruin. But when the prince declares himself boldly in favor of one party, if the one whom you adhere to wins, even though he is powerful, and you remain at his discretion, he does feel obligated to you, and there does exist a bond of friendship contracted between you. You suffered together, right? Trauma bonded. And men are never so dishonorable that they will destroy you and make so great a display of ingratitude. Moreover, victories are never so complete that the victor does not have to have some hesitations, especially with regard to justice. But if the one to whom you adhere loses, you will be taken in by him, and while he can, he will aid you, and you will become the ally of one whose fortune may rise again. So, even if you lose, he can still try to help you while he can, because it's like you were in it to win it. That's a good point. So, you both were like, in whatever battle it is, you openly declared for that person, you're ride or die, you lost, they'll help you. That's so interesting, because I thought some people were my friends, but they see me shadow banned, and they don't have me back on, and they won't help me break out of my shadow ban, and they just disassociate in order to save themselves, so the algorithm doesn't punish them, so the trolls don't come for them. And they never stick up for me openly anymore. That's an interesting one. See, if you look at what he's saying and you look at your own life, in history, and in the present, you begin to see he's right. That's fascinating. I'm a loyal person, and this is like, he's really telling us, you know, who you should be loyal to. As Muslims, we have to be loyal to other fellow Muslims, but we also have to be smart and have our wits about us in case there's people who are up to no good. In the second case, when those who fight one another are such that you do not have to fear the one who wins, taking sides is still so much more prudent. For you go to defeat one with the help of another, who ought to have saved him if he had been wise, since if he wins, he remains at your discretion, and with your help, it is impossible that he should fail to win. And here it should be noted that a prince must never ally himself with one more powerful than himself, in order to attack someone else, unless necessity compels it, as was said above. For if he wins, you remain his prisoner, and princes must avoid as much as possible being at the discretion of others. So you remain his prisoner. So you say you got an army of 20,000, they got 50,000, you both win, but they still have a lot of their soldiers. Now you're at their kind of beck and call, but if they want to, because if they change their mind, they can crush you. The Venetians allied themselves with France against the Duke of Milan, and they could have avoided making that alliance, which resulted in their ruin. But when one cannot avoid it, as was the case with the Florentines, when the Pope and Spain took their armies to attack Lombardy. So notice here, the Pope and Spain took their armies to attack Lombardy. So when Christians say they hate jihad, they hate that Muslims have this idea of a religious army and an army under the banner of religion. Notice that just shows you how stupid a lot of Christians are with the history of the Catholic Church and with history in general. So here we see the Pope participating in warfare. Pope and / wars. Then the prince must join in for the reasons stated above, nor should any state ever believe that it can always choose safe courses. Rather, let it think that it has to take only dubious ones, for this is to be found in the nature of things, that one never strives to avoid one difficulty without running into another, but prudence consists in knowing how to recognize these difficulties and choosing the least bad ones as good. Okay, so you got, this doesn't sound like the lesser of two evils argument, but it does sound like you have a difficult choice, but selecting the one that's the least bad. A prince must also show himself a lover of virtue. So a prince must show himself to love virtue. Because now today we have like Biden with his rainbow cabinets, like he's put in a lot of decadent social degenerates. He even had a man who had plastic surgery to get boobs and all that, and that person, that eunuch, was on the White House lawn, took off their shirt, and was bouncing their naked boobs on the White House lawn. And that type of indecency on the presidential lawn is so disgusting and had never really been done. So it is very interesting to think about that. How can a leader be virtuous and also display virtuosity, and why that's important? The secular liberal atheist doesn't care about virtue in that sense, because they support porn, they support brothels, they support open marriages, they support abortions. Like, they're not very virtuous people. It's really disgusting. Hookup culture is part of them as well. They support musicians who represent those values as well. So a conservative is supposed to be a lover of virtue, ideally. Show himself a lover of virtue, welcoming able virtuosi men and honoring those who excel in each art. So, remarkable people being promoted, not rappers, not lowering yourself to the most ratchet people. Moreover, he must encourage his citizens quietly to practice their trades, whether in commerce or agriculture or any other occupation that men have. in such a way that this man is not afraid to augment his possessions for fear that they may be taken from him, nor that man to start a commercial enterprise for fear of taxes. Okay? Fear of taxes. Fear of taxation. Now, California, like, I wanted to have a food truck, start selling my food. California has some of the highest taxes in the nation, and you have to ask yourself, they just want to kill the entrepreneur, and they want to make its jobs very hard to come by, and they want to put lots of bureaucracy and red tape. Now, there's, like, you go to some food carts you see in India, you're just like, okay, this is a food health hazard, you gotta have some basic regulations, right? At the same time, like, California requires food handler permits. I support that. They're not too hard. If you're too stupid to pass the food handler permit, then you shouldn't be making any food because you're playing with people's lives. Pregnant women, if they get food poisoning, they can have a miscarriage. You gotta be super careful when it comes to food. At the same time, you want to make it easy for people to have halal businesses, because if you don't, then they're going to choose drug dealing and prostitution. You're going to spread a crime. And if you're taxing upon taxing upon taxing upon taxing and just being a leech off of the citizens in every shape and form, well, now you're killing on the entrepreneurial spirit. So what he's saying right here is interesting. On the contrary, he must prepare prizes for whoever wants to do these things. So prizes for the people. That's an interesting point here. Prizes for the people. And for whoever thinks in any way about improving his city or his state. Besides this, he must, at an appropriate time during the year, keep the people occupied with festivals and spectacles. Aha! Sounds like Marx. Bread and circuses! Bread and circuses! Let's write that down. So, Marx was not the only person to say that. Festivals, spectacles, and as every city is divided into guilds or clans, he must take account of those groups. Meet with them from time to time. So visit the clans. That's AMLO of Mexico did that. He would go around. If you watch, you gotta go back and watch. But he has so many videos where he is talking to all the people from the different ethnic groups. So they're all Latinos in Mexico, but they all have their own very specific thing. Tiny villages. And seeing the traditional foods, and I really like that. He gave them a highlight. The indigenous people. The Indians of Mexico. Like, he was very good at that. It was very wonderful. Going to the rural areas, right? He must take into account those groups, meet with them from time to time, and give them example of his humanity and magnificence, always preserving, unshaken, however, the majesty of his position, for this should never fail in any way whatsoever. Majesty of his position, examples of his humanity, and examples of his magnificence. They'll talk about him. People in these groups, they'll talk, Like, is Biden magnificent? No. Is Biden have this sort of example of humanity? No. Any majesty? He's fumbling, weak, frail, not a good leader at all. Okay? People joke about him more than you realize. I'm not saying Trump is that, even though Trump obviously has more of a personality cult following than Biden. Okay? Nobody's really riding with Biden. Those are paid people. Paid shills. Bosch and others, TYT. They get a boost in the algorithm if they're pro-Biden. That's just the way it works. Dirty politics. Okay? That's why in 2016, the great banning on Twitter, before Elon bought it, tons of Trump meme accounts who were on the pulse of the culture war were banned. You know, it was just the way that it works. It's dirty politics. Be pro-Biden, get boosted. Pro-Trump, censored, shadow banned, deplatformed. So, you know. Now, when you go to the different guilds or clan, you're focusing on their speciality. You're focusing on what makes them them. So, when you see the United States president go to different states and he's like, you people here are a coal town. You people here make cherries, blah, blah, blah. They're being fake. But it would be nice, like I had this idea where a president should go to every single city in the country. Think about that. Every single city. Not just the swing states, but to really get down and walk and see what's happening. Go to the ghettos, see the decay. Don't hide and be impressed in like, oh, New York City skyscrapers, no nature. Talk to the real people instead of being in the artificial bubbles of the boardrooms. I think that touches a leader's heart more accurately. So, this is great advice. Prizes, incentivizing. So, through giving a prize to people who think of ways of improving society, the city, state, as he mentioned, you are incentivizing good behavior. America doesn't do that. They don't do that really. And so, he also said, show yourself to be a lover of virtue and be around those coming able virtuous men. Honor those who excel in those arts. So when you see our leaders today going to the lowest bottom, like thug people who promote drinking, porn, fornication, celebrity culture, those are not good people. Just because they have money and a lot of followings, like Amber Rose being at the RNC, the MAGA people, who some of them were Christians, were saying it's good enough, we'll get votes, but you're promoting someone who is not honorable, not virtuous, okay? That you rewarded her and gave her more fame by giving her that platform, okay? And she praised the Satanic Temple for offering abortions. How can a Christian say they need help from the abortionist feminist, the Radfem, who promotes pornography? Why do you need her help in order to win? You should appeal to your God. You should make your candidate obey God, not obey those who worship the devil, those who are open and unrepentant sinners. So it's fascinating to look at. So, as Muslims, we want to conceal our brother's sins, our sister's sins. We want to try to do our best, right? We want to have good akhlaq, good manners. We want to have taqwa, God consciousness. We're consistently doing self-reflection and working on ourselves and learning about our religion every day, inshallah. And we are trying to have a good circle of friends so that they can help push us and we push them to gaining success in this world and in the next. So, very fascinating how you can see his ideas, extract what he's talking about, and then apply it. Okay? Very wonderful. Okay. There's a couple notes here. The last chapter, I didn't really want to dig into the notes, but this one looks to be highly informative. Let's examine it. Ferdinand's armies drove the Moors from Spain in 1492. Okay, so, alright, I heard, okay, the Moors were Muslim, right? From my understanding. Forgive me if they weren't. I'm not familiar with Spain history in total. But I did see a right-wing Christian on Twitter/X say, we should treat the Muslims in Europe like how the Moors of Spain were treated. And that's the only way they can learn. And it took me a minute to understand such the insult. And I was like, wait a minute. Oh. And then now I read this note and I'm like, oh, I see. From Spain in 1492, with the capture of their last stronghold in Granada, he was a new prince in the sense that he acquired Castile through marriage and ruled it, as well as Aragon. From 1474 to 1504, since Castile actually belonged to his wife Isabella, it is not surprising that he chose to distract the barons of that kingdom with foreign wars. 2. The Marranos were Jews or Moors. What? Oh, whoops. Wait a minute. I thought Jews were... Oh, I see. Okay, never mind. Okay. The Marranos were Jews or Moors who had converted to Christianity but were distrusted by the Spaniards. Using religion as a pretext, Ferdinand drove them out of Spain in 1502. So the Spanish Catholics chased out the Jews. I think in today's Catholics would call them anti-Semitic. Machiavelli's comment on this event and something pitiful and rare suggests he has mixed feelings about it, despite his recognition that such things contributed to the prince's reputation. Okay, he notes how Ferdinand took the war against the Moors in Africa in 1509, how he had earlier captured Sicily from the French in 1496 and the entire kingdom of Naples from them in 1504, and how he drove them from Italy between 1511 and 1513. Finally, he notes how Ferdinand attacked France in 1512, obtaining control of Navarre by 1515. So, wait a minute. So was that guy talking about the Jays, or was he talking about the Muslims, or both the Jays and Muslims? Confusing. Bernabo Visconti, 1323-1385, was Duke of Milan from 1354 until 1385, when he was killed by his nephew Gian Galeazzo, with whom he had ruled jointly. Like his entire family, he was famous for the ingenious cruelty of his punishments. Okay, so Bernabo Visconti, he had cruel punishments, so we have to check him out. Antiochus III, also known as the Great, 223-187 BCE, was the king of Syria and was allied to the city-states of northern and central Greece that made up the Aetolian League. The Achaeans were also a confederacy of Greek city-states. The Romans defeated the Achaeans in 197, and the Aetolians, along with Antiochus, in 190. The episode Machiavelli is about to recount can be found in Livy's History of Rome. Okay, so Livy, we've heard him cited quite a few times, so we're going to check him out as well. So we have Bernabo Visconti and then Livy's History of Rome. 5. They did this in 1499 when Louis XII drove Ludovico Sforza from Milan. In the next sentence, Machiavelli indirectly refers to the fact that Florence maintained its alliance with France in 1512, when Julius II and Ferdinand of Aragon combined to drive the French out of Italy, one result of which was the destruction of the Florentine Republic. This led to the restoration of the Medici to political power, and it marked the beginning of Machiavelli's own exile from the city. Snap. Wow. Subhanallah. Full of knowledge here. Very fun. He had some very great things for us in this chapter. How do you act to gain prestige? So, he mentioned how others made use of religion, how there was a pope who made use of religion and did things under the cloak of religion. Okay? But he also mentioned how a prince should give rare examples of his ability in domestic government. Okay? And that you need to be honest in your warfare, who you declare for. You need to accomplish rare feats. You need to accomplish exemplary things. Okay? He mentioned the futility of neutrality, and that you need to examine, are you going to fear the victor? What's going on here, right? And also just mentioning how the Pope, Catholics participating in Spanish wars, and that would then they point out that the Spain and France didn't always get along. Okay. Very interesting. And that even if you pick the losing side, that person, if they're still able to help you, usually will. And they may rise again. So, be careful. And that the Pope and the King of Spain took their armies to attack Lombardy. And he mentioned that prudence consists in knowing how to recognize the difficulties and choosing the least bad one as good. And that a prince, he has to reward those and honor those who excel in each art. And he mentioned the people need to occupy themselves with festivals and spectacles, and that he needs to visit and interact with the guilds and clans of different groups, right? So that they can see his majesty, his humanity, and his magnificence, and to be unshaken, and that he shouldn't fail in any way whatsoever around them, in front of them, giving them something to talk about. The festivals is interesting. Now, I think America went overboard. Like, it's like, oh, today's Donut Day, today's Earth Day. Like, there's always a day. And then they're like, no. But if you look at, there was a festival in Brigham City, Utah called Peach Days. And those kind of fun little festivals do help keep people happy. It's something to look forward to. Wholesome family fun, where children can play. Now, spectacles like the Super Bowl get a bit extreme, right? But as a Muslim, we have to remember that this worldly life is filled with a lot of glitz and glamour, and we can't get sidetracked with the dunya. So you can have fun, but there's like a balance. There's a measure for how much you are supposed to do, and to make sure you're not becoming overly indulgent, right? Very good points. I did not know the word marranos meant Jews and Moors that had converted to Christianity. Fascinating. See, yes. 15th century Spain looks spicy. That's what I'll tell you. Remember Livy's History of Rome. Bernabo Visconti was known for his cruelty and his punishments. History is wild. Okay? Absolutely wild. If you'd like to support my work, I'm not monetized. You can do so by going to www.subscribestar.com/MilahanArchive. Like, share, and comment if you can. What was something that you learned? What do you think about his ideas? Let everybody know.